All right. What do we want to do for a cold open? What do we want to do? We want to do
I don't
anything?
know. What's wrong with your shirt, Mitch?
What's wrong with it?
Think about it.
It's blue.
It's UK.
There is nothing wrong with this shirt. Which is not to say there's not a lot wrong with our basketball team this year. But anyway.
Okay. Well, there's our opening to the show right there. As we continue on, today's episode is your brand message and action. So welcome to the NerdBrand Podcast. I'm Jason. That's John. Actually, that's probably John. It's probably going that way. And that's Mitch. So let's get started with this one. So once you discover something, there's always a now what. So once you get your brand online and you want to show your passion, well, now what? And we've come across this quite a bit, haven't we, guys? Like,
yeah, there's a big handoff between, establishing a brand or doing a rebrand, and then what do we do ongoing? What's the next stage, and how do we actually get this in front of the people we want to?
I think part of it, when people launch a brand, that's the exciting, fun part. When we're launching a brand, we're putting ourselves out there. We're got a new logo and a shiny store or shiny web presence and everything. And then the hard part is, how do we do this now?
Yeah. It's like ordering something from Amazon and it arrives and you don't get the instruction booklet and you're just like, well, I think I've seen one of these before.
Yeah, the fun part's opening it and taking out of the box. The hard part is actually putting it to use.
Yeah. So all of it's great, but so we're going to talk on the show today about what's the deliverables on that. And you may be thinking like, well, that sounds like marketing. It's kind of, I'm going to do it, John. Actually, John should do that. But before we get to that, we're going to start out with Mitch's tidbit. Mitch, what's the tidbit?
Tidbit today is some of you may be aware. Jonathan put a really cool post on LinkedIn this week talking about the Warner Brothers logo refresh, which was actually performed by a very prestigious graphic design company. It's one of the most successful and largest in the world. That's Pentagram. Pentagram. They're one of the largest and most successful graphic design companies in the world. They have offices from London to New York to the West Coast to other parts of the world. At any rate, they refreshed the Warner Brothers logo, which previously they were using the pretty gold shield with kind of the sky background. Different iterations of that have sort of been around for a long, long time. They did a very basic, very clean, kind of stripped away a lot of the other, some of the background and everything away from the logo. So basically you just have the outline of the shield with a WB and a pretty blue and a font underneath that says Warner Brothers. Interesting thing, according to PR Newswire, 11% of the people that saw the new rebranding like it over the old brand. 11%.
Whole 11.
A whole 11.
Yeah, this is something that was done in 2019, but they didn't really do a press release on it until 2020. And as we all know, none of us really remember 2020 or want to. So it's not surprising that happened, but go on.
I know they rolled out the on-screen kind of the 3D one a while back, and this is the flat kind of
right.
This is the flat version that they've just kind of released, or like you said, trying to bring attention to it, I guess.
Right. It's very one-dimensional. It is very clean. There's an interesting. I've read a couple of articles about it, and one of the things that they're pretty consistent about pointing to as far as why it may not be very popular is there's a nostalgia factor with a brand that's been around as long as Warner Brothers. I mean, they've been around since before talkies, when movies were still silent movies in the turn of the century. Never, and not to mention the catalog of Warner Brothers cartoons that people really, really, when people think Warner Brothers, I think the animated series with their animated cartoons with Bugs Bunny and
Looney Tunes,
Daffy Duck, Looney Tunes, right? All of that. That's what they think about, and they think about Bogey, Humphrey Bogart, and the Casablanca.
I think about Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain, because the Animaniacs, they live in the water tower.
Well, exactly. Well, exactly. But even then, I mean, when the Animaniacs came on, you saw that big, pretty, 3D shield, the Warner Brothers shield. People get attached to things. People get attached to legacy iconography, and especially big brands that have been around for a long time. I think sometimes they have to tread very carefully as far as we want to refresh ourselves. But okay, question number one: why?
Yeah.
What do you hope to accomplish by refreshing your brand? Another one, another legacy brand, somewhat that comes into this conversation with the same issue is Burger King. Look what they just did.
I was just about to say.
And that Smucker's logo we saw not too long ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
It kind of begs the question of like, when can you do that as a Warner Brothers? When do you have the opportunity? Because at some point you've got to recognize that there's a new generation of viewers, consumers, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And at some point, or is there a point at which you kind of have to just take the bullet and do a rebrand and try to appeal to that new demographic or new customer?
Well, I think it goes back to your point though. What are you trying to accomplish? Look at Coca-Cola. When was the last time Coke really refreshed their branding? I mean, they've tweaked it basically as far as the background that their script logo will sit on. It's generally when they've refreshed, it's been in their labeling. It hasn't been for the mark itself.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Sure.
color red has been tweaked.
I think there's a history. The history that comes with a legacy brand in a lot of ways is fuel for their engine. And that's what gives them equity in the marketplace. I don't necessarily think that a lot of these brands have any other motivation besides maybe just vanity.
Getting PR.
Right?
I mean, it's a big deal to be in the headlines and be on social, and to be controversial gets you airtime these days.
Yeah, it plays in today's episode too. What we're talking about, like, what do you do next after you relaunch it? What's the next step? PR is one of those steps. But this happened in the comics. I remember when Superman, not just his logo, but his whole look was changed, and the uproar that caused. Batman, same thing, and it was like, yeah. Do you remember it was like after Batman's back was broken, and it was the Nightfall series. This is really probably old. And, you had a new suit completely. And the biggest complaint, people were like, where's the Bat logo that's on the suit? And it wasn't. And then they went back and they added it, incorporated it. And eventually it was just like not accepted. And then they ended up circling back to the old traditional, suit that he wore and logo and everything. I mean, it went right back to that. In fact, it went back to the Michael Keaton-ish looking suit is what happened. Right. And then they went back to the gray suit, and now we're seeing even further nostalgia with, thanks to Zack Snyder's universe. But yeah, I think the Warner Bros. I personally like the Warner Brother logo. I do. I think that there's
you're out.
Yeah, I'm in that 11%.
I'm just kidding.
What do you mean the 11%?
I'm in the 11%, only because I see that from a printing standpoint and from we'll just say a usage standpoint. And by that, I mean all mediums, it's much easier than the previous. You can't print gold.
No, you can't. You can. You just can't publish gold digitally.
Right. And I think that's what they're thinking of is streaming. I think part of that purpose was like, hey, we got the streaming partnerships and things like that. And we want to make sure that we're, it works with that as well as much as it does with our movies. So,
well, and I saw the 3D one. I like that one. The flat one's kind of, I don't know. But if it was a new company, it's because it's the nostalgia. You're changing something that's been there for decades, and that's the opposition to it. But on its surface, without that context, it's not bad. It's not bad design. And I thought the on-screen one looked good when they add some depth to it. I thought it looked good. But and I think the distinction between a company or a brand like Coca-Cola and Warner Brothers, I think that's interesting too, because I mean, Coca-Cola is sugar water. You're not ever going to have trouble getting that next generation of kids and teenagers to drink sugar water. But I mean, not to discount their brand, but the product itself kind of just thrives on its own, at least in our culture, in
Yeah.
our society.
Yeah.
So, but
I mean, it speaks to the fact that there's so many things to consider when developing a brand icon, when developing brand iconography. But I think it's even more perilous if you're taking an existing brand and refreshing it, especially if you've got a strong following already. You've got to be very, very careful that you don't want to alienate your loyalists, because there's a reason they like that iconography. There's a reason they like that logo. And that's a credit
for that one. We're the ones right now in that chair.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a credit to the brand. It's not a weak. I think for some reason, boardrooms get in a mentality as, well, we have to refresh it just because that's what because we're tired of looking at it.
Yeah.
You are not the audience. And this is this is a discussion we have all the time. You're not the audience. Your audience is outside that door.
Right.
It's what matters to them.
Yeah.
So you have to keep that in mind.
Vanity will get you flattery, I suppose, but it doesn't really. It's a thing in our industry that we come across. Like, they want certain things on certain mediums, and we do try to please that, of course, because it's their brand, but without the sensitivity of what the audience is looking at, what they want to see, and they can expect. That's the biggest thing. Like, you go to a brand and you don't see what you expect, man, you can lose so much from that. Not just revenue, you lose just respect, and that's
you alienate.
Yeah,
people can't relate to that anymore. It's like
losing that respect, though. That's the hardest thing to get back. So, anyways, so that's the tidbit. Warner Bros. Has a new logo, and apparently Jason's the only one on this podcast that's okay with it.
I'm okay with it, but I don't feel like I have a strong connection to Warner Brothers in general, in some ways. So
you're not old like us.
Well, that's true. If you're gonna make the joke, I'll take it.
But anyway, one more little thing I'll say about it. And we kind of touched on it. I didn't get to kind of elaborate, but that's the whole idea that Burger King essentially went back to the logo they had 10, 15 years ago.
They did, yeah.
They went back to their roots? They went back to, who are we?
Yeah.
This is who we are. This is what people recognize about us. This is what made people feel comfortable about us.
Yeah. Arby's tried that. That didn't work out very well. They tried
Burger King too. I read an article on it, and they're making a big push with the Whopper being all natural, and that's a big thing going on in kind of the food industry overall. People are looking for healthier options, but that's kind of to put the burger back into focus and take the kingness away, and the mascot of the king and all that. It's putting the focus back on the burger so that they can talk about it, being 100% natural and a high quality, whether or not people buy that.
Well, and back in the day when they had the logo they've kind of gone back to, the have it your way was their slogan, meaning we give you what you want the way you want it. And I think, to your point, Jonathan, the move toward all natural, and that's another step they're taking toward giving people what they want. So it makes even more sense to go back to that iconography and that messaging. That's an example of how to do it smart.
Right.
Warner Brothers, I'm not sure.
Audience.
Right. Warner Brothers, I think, is less of it. Yeah. Warner Brothers is less about the audience, I think, than it is a direction that they've decided their boardroom wants to go.
Well, and on that note,
you got to be careful.
On that note, we're going to move on to let's see what John's got some interesting things about what's going on in the tech world with YouTube.
I just actually came across this morning, and it's something that we talk about with video all the time. But in 2020, there was an 80% increase in YouTube and YouTube TV watch time on TV screens, not just in general, but specifically on TV screens, which means it's made its way into people's living rooms much more so. And just anecdotally, I can definitely attest to that myself.
Me too.
We have YouTube with the Roku pulled up, and we have YouTube access, and it's on at least daily, usually, for a decent amount of time. So it's we talk about the value of video all the time. It's a huge asset to have. People sometimes look at the price tag and think, especially small businesses, think, it's not really doable. It's not going to be that valuable. But when you think about video and what we say all the time, it goes everywhere. It can go on YouTube. It can go on social media. It can go on your website, landing pages, digital ads. I mean, it's just so versatile and it's effective. So I don't know. What do you guys think about? Have you been watching YouTube more on the TV than in the past?
I have. I've been watching YouTube a ton. I mean, it's one of my primary go-tos for entertainment because I do not have a cable subscription and I never have any plans to get one ever again. I've not had cable now for over a decade. So there's that.
I'm on year 5 or 6, I think.
Yeah, I have YouTube. I have other various outlets through. I have an Apple TV. Actually, my Apple TV, I think, is an old one. It's like a 4th generation. It's not the one you talk to and tell it what to watch. So let's put it that way. So I have some limitations coming up. Unfortunately, I don't have any devices that I can get right now to get to Disney Plus, which kind of makes me mad because I really want to watch WandaVision and Loki coming up. But,
WandaVision is amazing.
Yeah, I've heard. Hush, I haven't seen anything yet. I have Netflix and I have Amazon Prime, and I only have Netflix right now to kind of get caught up on the catalog of things I care about, and which I have almost come to the end of that journey right now because it's gotten expensive. I feel like I could get a better bargain with Disney Plus, so it's one of those things where I got to look at getting a new Apple TV so I can enjoy the content that's available through that and some other device maybe for Disney if I can't get through Apple. So we'll see, because I know the Hulu app that I have doesn't give me Disney Plus access. So
you have to get there's a package for new subscribers.
Yeah, of which it does not play on the device that I have. So
it's your Roku.
Yeah, exactly. I say the same thing.
I've got an old Roku too, and it shows it because when I try to watch anything through it, it crashes. So it's life. Its life is at an end. I just need to pull it out, throw it away. Honestly, it's kind of gotten to that point. It's over. It's about 6 years old or something like that when it first came out. So it's very, very old. Doesn't work. But I need to get a new device in order to watch all the new fun things I want to watch. And that's not even talking about HBO Max. If I want to get into that for a bit and watch some stuff on there. So yeah, that's my primary go-to for entertainment though, is YouTube in between all of that stuff. Local television is easy to get if you have an antenna, which everybody's TV still does that. But let's be honest, local over-the-air broadcast is pretty much.
People are so used to on demand. I mean, I think one of the things that maybe has helped YouTube, I mean, in a way, is COVID. I think a lot of people that's driven people. For example, a lot of churches, people can't physically go to church now, and a lot of churches now broadcast their services on YouTube on a weekly basis. And I mean, not that that doesn't account for the whole shift necessarily, but things like that, things that people were used to doing live or in other mediums, now YouTube is the place to go to get it.
I watched New Year's Eve on YouTube. I've done it the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, YouTube Live is a very powerful engine. I think anything that you like. I'm a big fan of, and I don't care, plug it, but I like Kevin Smith's, Batman Beyond, and they've moved to a live format for their podcast on video, kind of like what we're doing here, except it's not pre-recorded, of course, but you can just go watch it later. So there's really no editing. It's kind of really done. So it's just shot straight through. But I've looked at it. I mean, it's not difficult to kind of get done. It really isn't. I mean, video is becoming so accessible to the layman that to not get involved with it, or at least put your toe in it, is, I think, a missed opportunity for businesses, because of who you can touch and who you can reach now, organically or with paid advertising. So definitely,
I think, like you said, it's just not. It seems daunting, especially if you haven't done it. Doing it that first time, or even with us trying to move the podcast from audio to video, I think there's a learning curve a little bit, but it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. Even 5 years ago, I feel like trying to do quick little videos was tough, and then you had the distribution side of it, which was even tougher. Now it's just, that's what people expect. That's what they want to see. you look at apps like TikTok and Instagram and even Facebook and all of those, I mean, video rules those explore pages and news feeds. So it's like, got to get on the boat now, and it's not as hard, it's not as expensive as it used to be or as it might seem. And if you don't know how to do it, we're kind of here.
Yeah, I mean, equipment to do video is it can range obviously a smartphone with a simple, little rig with the thing about video, here's where people always mess up on video with these DIYers out there. So if you're listening, this is for you. You've got to think about audio. You've got to think about lighting. If you don't, I don't know where that accent comes from, but if you don't think about that, then you're going to put out a video nobody can hear, therefore no one's going to watch. And if it's poorly lit, then it's going to look like you're recording an ISIS interrogation video. So don't do that either. So think about lighting. Those are things that are really inexpensive to fix. Like Mitch, he's got one of those ring lights that he stole from his wife's makeup.
Which is expensive.
Yeah, I operate on, I've got two big pane windows in my living room, and I'm sitting at my table, and that light, the natural light's coming in because it's the way my house faces. And well, John's got a window on his right
Trying
side.
to find light up here.
Yeah.
In my attic.
Yeah. And there's instances where you can't help that, but we are aware of the needs of proper lighting. So at least you can see us, and with proper audio, with microphones. We're not just using our laptops. We're not using, aside from Mitch, probably, I think he's just listening with these, but you don't want to use any kind of microphone like that. I mean, they're great to pick up stuff. Even the microphone that's on the on your device is fine, but you got to think about in social distancing, you're 6 feet away. Okay, look, if you got to shout in order to hear it, or you have to in post raise the volume, something's gone wrong, because people pick that up in their ears when they listen to it. Like, this is not a natural sound. And we've had to do it before in the past because of technical difficulties, because of, COVID and being remote, but anytime you can kind of get closer to that studio quality, you should make that effort. And yes, it does require a budget, but we can help you figure that out.
And if you want to DIY it, I think the other thing aside from the digital technology is that you can go on Amazon and buy, one of those soft boxes or light kits for, $60 and have good lighting. And, obviously it takes a little expertise or testing to figure out exactly how to use it. The same with microphones. I mean, those lapel mics are not super expensive anymore, and they're easy to set up, and, so there's ways to do it, and if you're just going to shoot with your phone, even in a quiet environment, I think that's okay, depending on the type of video you're trying to shoot.
Yeah, if you can keep the phone device camera stationary on a tripod, do so. If you got to carry it around, you just got to be extra careful that you don't have this bouncy video going on. That's when you need to probably go get a gimbal or something. Getting these tools makes a world of difference in the process of, because everything is in post. Like, you want to record a video and you think while you're recording it, I'm good, I'm just going to publish it from here. No, there's the editing. If you really want to be professional, and you're going to spot all these things later, and that's really the worst time to do that. So it's not expensive. Getting good stands that can go together, like Rector sets, to kind of fit certain ways. Like, John and I were discussing, like, what if you shoot over top where you're pointing the camera down? Getting equipment for that, it's $35 on Amazon to get a couple pieces of equipment. One to hold the phone so you can move it in multiple directions and positions, and then the other is just a stand that kind of sits next to the table, kind of goes over the head and points down. These are things that are easily found, and that's the trick to video. It's like, it's more, don't ever think that you can just, hey, no, don't do that. There's all these other things to consider if you really want it done well and people to come back and watch again. So that's the only defense I can have for video production, folks, because I know that the tendency is that, we're going to have these big cameras, we're going to have all this staff, we're going to have all these grips and people and blah, blah. And there's times and necessary for that, if you're doing a full-on production and commercial. But we're in the age of, like, quick, get it done and put it out there, and that's it. And you got to get the right equipment, but you can still make it happen. Anyways, thoughts other than that, additional thoughts? Because Mitch, you've got a lot of video experience.
Well, it's like you said. I mean, yeah, you can go as big as you want as far as production. If you're doing, doing TV commercials, or you want to do really high quality stuff that can that'll translate into multiple mediums, but you still want to have high production value. And there is an expense on the front end, but to the point that you made earlier, you can extend that out for a long period of time and go on put that video on multiple channels. So that investment actually goes a long way, and translates into a lot of different places and a lot of different ways to use that video.
Right. The key word there is investment. A lot of people see it as an expense, and like it's going to be some bottomed out thing. No, it's going to go across every marketing medium that you have, and theoretically, if you've done it well, there should be a return on investment. So it's not like you're just pouring that $2,500 or even $5,000 down the drain. Like if you can make a really good 30-second spot that can live for 5 years, and it drives customer after customer after customer, that's really not that much of an expense in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point with that. That's an excellent point, is that many people view it as an expense. I'm buying a website, I'm buying this, I'm buying a video. No, you're making an investment. There's something hopefully attached to that. It's a strategy that's got some long-term goals, but you're making an investment, because what do we always say? Everything is an ad. So everything you produce is an ad. So you're creating an ad. So you need to make sure you've got the proper branding and message inside that ad, including that video. Otherwise, you're going to have conflicting messages going out and things like that, which is another thing to consider as you go into this realm. Which brings us to our first point, and what's the deliverables that need to happen? So since we brought up websites and video and all this stuff, well, what is a brand? We talked about in the last episode, what is a brand message? Well, now let's start with copywriting. Many people don't realize how important. Many people ask, I've got this kind of going on now where put together a web page, here's a link to something else, and just use that content. I'm like, I can't. Everybody else's, that company's organization's name is on there. I cannot copy pasta, which is copy paste, into a new web page for you and then edit copy around and all that. It's not that simple. First of all, they're going to know that if it's proprietary. They're going to get a Google ding, and it's going to say like, hey, this other place is using your stuff, and they just changed the name. So copywriting is very important in being original and developing your own, and focusing on the tone driven by the brand. So I let you guys kind of take it from there, since we know words have power.
Oh, your brand has a language, a language that resonates with your customers. Somebody else's brand has a language that resonates with, while their customers may be similar to yours. Well, if you're using their language, how does that differentiate you from them? Okay. To your point about using other, just borrowing other people's material. No, you want to come up with a language and a tone that represents who you are and the value that you bring to the marketplace. And you're not going to get that from stealing somebody else's. You need to develop and create and craft a language that speaks to who you are, what you bring to the table, and why that's an advantage. And that's going to be unique to you. And that's what's part of what's going to differentiate you from your competition.
Yeah. You're speaking their language. English is not just English.
Words aren't just words.
Yeah, we won't go into that. I think anybody's watched the news. I think anybody who's watched the news over the last 3 or 4 weeks knows this, what we're alluding to. So, all right. Second thing is graphic design, web design. Basically, visual design is what we mean by this, is what you see. Creating imagery and logos for many different formats and mediums is important. John, look, shirt up. Like, look, notice that. John's the only one on the podcast that's wearing, I'm on brand, but John's actually got our brand on display. That logo is made for that medium that he's wearing, that apparel. Can you ask the same of your logo? When you start embroidering things, they may just come out to a blob. There's just limitations. And so you want to have something that's clean. To kind of go back to what we said about the Warner Brothers logo, I think that it was redone to meet some limitations they have with things, for consistency's sake. Any other opinions other than that?
I think the consistency angle is the big one there. Obviously, it's got to catch people's any kind of visual design and aesthetic has to catch people's attention, and it's got to be compelling, and it's got to support the medium wherever it's at. I don't know. You have to edit this part. I lost my train of thought.
I mean, there's really, there's really
Yeah.
not a lot to say about this. I mean, because we're talking about something that's incredibly subjective. You know, what I like and what you like is very different. We have a saying around here that, you know, pretty is easy, smart is hard. And the reason why pretty is easy, we don't mean it because, oh, it's easy to make something beautiful. No, it's not. What we're saying is, at least this is how I interpret Mitch's axiom, is that anybody can make a website, anybody can make a logo, anybody that's got computer skills can open up and make something. And to their eyes and to the eyes of maybe close relatives that don't want to hurt their feelings, they'll tell them it's great. But does it work? That's the hard part. Is it applicable? Can it be used on different things? This is where professionals come in. So there is cost justification to start out on, you know, freelancer networks and with people that, you know, because your affordability is there. Many people may balk at the idea of how much a logo would cost. You know, I'm not going to say what a logo costs for us because we don't just sell logos here at NerdBrand, but not cheap, because there is so much thought that we put into it. You know, Nike's logo was, I don't know, I think the story's like what, $70. And then now look at all of its value put together. It's probably millions of dollars just because of the fact of it's on apparel. It's on everything that is, you know, has their name. So you have to think about it in that way. So it's not just ever a logo. It's never just a website. It's never just a thing. It's your brand, and the visuals need to match. So not too much time, I guess, we need to spend on that.
I think where I was heading was the consistency factor, and you know, throughout the branding process, obviously, hopefully, whoever you're working with has developed brand standards and a guide. And as as you get into the marketing aspect of the rebrand launch or the brand launch, you know, you got to stay within those guidelines, or you don't have a brand. And I say that to clients all the time. It's you know, because a lot of folks brush off the need for that brand guide. They're like, oh, it's just a PDF. Well, no, it's your brand. If you don't follow it, then you don't have a brand. You never walk into Speedway or Kroger or Meijer, anywhere, and see Coca-Cola's logo differently.
Right.
There might be a little tweak or whatever, but it's always red, it's always white, it's always the gray or silver.
It's always the same red, or always the same gray, always the same silver.
Yep. And, you know, it's like what you said. I mean, you know, if you're a small business owner listening to this, you got to understand, like, we even know this, like when we always bring up branding guys, because look, if the big boys are doing it and you want to start maybe 10 years, fulfill your dream and get to that point, you need it now. You should be working on it now. Does it evolve and change over time? Of course it does. But to not ever have that at all to begin with really leaves you open to a mess. And I think many people know what I'm talking about. Which you mentioned, marketing, John. So that's our third thing here. This is something else that you get the ball rolling on your brand. This is where the next steps are. It is marketing, but it's more brand management. You know, marketing is going to do their thing. They're going to recommend ads. They're going to recommend campaigns, but copy tone, branding guide, those are the things that will keep marketing from drifting off into Never Land, because they don't have any compass to direct them. Mitch, you gave me an analogy a while back of something where you can have this big giant ship, but if you don't have a rudder and a North Star to guide you, you're just drifting at sea. You're just letting the wave carry you. And that's what happens. See, Mitch is the poet in our group.
I'm big on analogies. I'm big on like mental pictures.
Yeah. But marketing needs something to put on those channels, and the brand management is what says, no, the logo is spelled, the name is spelled this way, you know, not that way. Like NerdBrand, we should have done a good job by even looking at John's shirt, capital N, capital B, one word. Not Nerd Brands, not Nerd Branding, just NerdBrand. I know we have nerdbrandagency.com as our website. Feel free to visit it. But NerdBrand Agency is not the name either. That's just a formality of the internets that we have to fulfill, because we don't own the actual domain, nerdbrand.com. But we own many other domains that are associated with the name NerdBrand to redirect you to the proper one. And that's something else too. Have you insulated your brand with naming conventions? Um, you gotta think about that. Is all your social media accounts, are they in continuity? All of ours are at NerdBrand Agency. You're not going to find at NerdBrand or at NerdBrands or at some nerds at the, no, it's always at NerdBrand Agency. So these are brand management things that marketing has to be informed about so that they know where to make the post, where to direct people's eyeballs to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
And
what
it may little things like that may seemingly be little things, but they're not. Like, for example, when somebody goes to, if a customer or a vendor or partner, whatever, goes to tag your social media page, and your company is ABC, or your page is ABC usually, but you've named your Facebook page ABC Company. Well, they're not gonna, they're gonna have more difficulty finding it. They may just give up and not tag you. Um, when you get into printing things or doing an email, it's much easier to say, find us at NerdBrand Agency or NerdBrand Agency than it is to have to list out, well, we got a different username for Facebook and Twitter and Instagram,
Yeah.
but you can still find us. But we're a little more convoluted.
If you try.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
you want to make it as simple to find you as possible. I mean, it's very practical. It's very practical.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think NerdBrand is 2 words, and that's fine. Even Google does. I can't keep Google from thinking that. There are just certain things where you just run up against stuff that infuriate you. We have that with our Google business page, I believe, when it comes to the naming. But at the end of the day, it's like, no, it's 1 word, and there's many people that do it. WordPress is the same way. That's not by accident that NerdBrand is like it is spelled. And when you look at WordPress, you have capital W, capital P. If you go onto Reddit in the WordPress community threads and you type in WordPress all lowercase or WordPress capital W lowercase p, or make it 2 words, you will get crucified for that.
There's a you mentioned Reddit. There's a funny if you go on there and you make a comment and you mention Chick-fil-A, if you misspell it, Reddit has bots and things just kind of running in the background. There's a Chick-fil-A bot that will come in and say it's actually spelled XYZ, spelled correctly.
Yep. I mean, spelling is very important when communicating your brand, because you got to understand, like, you're probably not the only one that's got that name or a variation of. I mean, it just happens. I mean, this is 2021. It's not 1920. Somebody probably else has probably thought of that.
Right. Especially globally. I mean,
yeah.
There are other NerdBrand entities out there. Definitely, we compete with them on search engines and as a brand. Not that they're prominent and we're not necessarily there yet either, but eventually when that heats up and that competitiveness heats up, you want to make sure all your stuff's in a row.
Yeah, and
it will happen.
With that, I want to make the distinction that is a branded search, not just a search for a service that your company does. They do a branded search of your name plus that service. That's a branded search. And so therefore, that's where John's talking about with that. So that's something else too to look at. It's like, just Google yourself. What do you look like on there? You're going to really be sad. A lot of people are right now after the December update. That's okay. But yeah, that's an important thing to consider too in your brand management. What do you look like on Google? That's not something you do once and then fix it and think like, all right, we're fine. Google updates like every 3 months, sometimes every month. And it's just enormous of a task to keep track of, just to see not just where you land, but how you look, because Google cares about context and the topic and not necessarily the fanciness of checking off the SEO boxes of title tag, meta descriptions. That's all technical SEO. Has value, is real, needs to be done. But, Google is looking for, like, think of it as like walking into a room. You've been invited to a cocktail party and people are having conversations and you kind of hear the conversations you want to join. You got that split second to kind of make that happen. It's not a backyard barbecue where you got time to chow down and sit around and wait for something to come to you. That's how I would equate that. See, I can do analogies too.
I'm hungry. And I think just gotta tying back up to the now what, you've launched a brand and you're getting into the actual marketing, which is what people want to do first usually. But you get into the dilemma of, well, I need social media, I need XYZ. What platform should I be on? how do we actually do this? And I think a lot of it, we talked about it, I think in the past,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it has to do with the resources you have, the types of people you employ, the agency support that you're willing to bring in or have the budget to bring in, and the type of agency. Every agency has different strengths and weaknesses. It's important to kind of vet your agency and for what you need. If you
Right.
need, if your brand is one that can be very successful with social media and kind of have that organic viral nature, um, do you want to look to an agency that has a track record and expertise of working with companies like that and having, a social
Right.
media team at minimum?
Well,
uh,
I mean, it's like if you're a company and you've got these gaps, an agency fills the gaps. We are not the fix. We're not going to fix you operationally. We cannot. We don't work for you. We work with you. There's a big difference fundamentally there. And even as a vendor, we work with you. And so, you throw something at us, we're going to have questions. We're going to be like, what? Because there's no way to understand something in that kind of context without a discussion. We do everything by strategy because we don't want to set ourselves up or you for failure and waste money and waste time on both ends, ours or yours. So it's very important that what we propose, we have planned out and agreed that these are things. We've talked about a content anchor, kind of to allude to your point. It's like, you can't do all the things. So pick the thing you can do based upon the resources you have internally and where we can come in and help.
mhm.
And, if you have an email newsletter, great. But how it's managed, we can help fill that gap and do that besides just writing a bunch of words, putting a picture on there and sending it out to your list. That's not managing a newsletter. That's spamming people, frankly. So, we add a little bit more thought process to that and segmentation to talk to these people differently than those people, because just a broad blast on the wall just doesn't, nobody wants to hear that. There's too much going on in the world. There's too much water, fire hosing happening. So that's kind of what we do as an agency. When you work with us, we fill the gaps. Where are you bleeding? We're that gauze that goes in and tries to fix that by addressing the external communication problems, and sometimes often internal communication problems through a brand message, again, not operational. We're not going to recommend hires, and we're not going to recommend where to spend your internal budget on those kinds of things. That's a business developer or consultant or business coach, as I believe they're called today. And that's that. We're happy. We know some of those people. We're happy to just do a direct referral on those. But I think that's going to wrap it up. Unless you got anything else you want to add.
I think it's just, again, just harping on that resources. Like if you're an engineering firm and what you do is kind of complicated and it needs a lot of attention to detail and you have jargon that the industry follows, but you don't have anybody on staff who's a high quality writer who understands the business, you're going to have struggles if you want to jump into SEO and jump into content marketing. So it's just looking at that, as you get into marketing and as you get into the what next, it may require personnel changes, kind of like what we're saying. You may have to kind of accept that fact if you really want to be one of those brands that's present in those digital environments. Well, you got to have people on your team who understand those to some degree and understand, at minimum, how to spot opportunities within your company
Yeah.
that fit in those mediums. You may not be able to do the creative work or the written work, and that's fine, but you have to have people internally who can identify that and then work with a consultant, a vendor, an agency to bring that to life. And so to me, that's the biggest what's next or now what. That's the biggest hurdle is obviously how do we spot those opportunities, and then how do we get the execution. And that's business though.
Yeah, that is. It's not. If it were easy, everybody would be doing it. It is difficult. I mean, as a business owner, there's a lot on the plate just from the financial side of things, staff like you're discussing, and strategically thinking, and you just kind of have to take a breath on that and leave some of those other things to an external vendor or source that's what they do. They do what they do very well, like what we do very well. We're good at what we do, and you're good at what you do. So we have to, it's not saying like you don't have a say. It's just saying like, if you're not doing what you do well and we're not doing what we do well and everybody's just trying to do all this, then you're going to fail. And then as a result, we do too.
Yeah.
And so as you rise, we rise. And that's our philosophy in that. So, because we're going to ask you to participate.
It's a partnership. It's a partnership. It's not like where you call a plumber and they come in and fix your pipes and you just stand back and watch. You're an active participant in this relationship, and we need to be able to talk to you and discuss with you and see what's going on in your mind and see what you're thinking and understand, your business and your brand. So you have to be a participant, an active participant in the relationship.
Yeah. And it's actually,
we're not just selling you a thing.
Yeah, but it's actually fun. I don't want anybody listening to this thinking that, this is a pointing the finger at you. This is actually fun. This is a fun process when you actually sit down and get involved with us. We have many people that have said that already. I don't have to do any convincing on that. Just go to our website, nerdbrandagency.com, and then click on portfolio and just start reading through our case studies and the reviews that we have. They'll tell you. I mean, it's a fun process. It doesn't sound like it is, because in the past, people have gotten a website made. It's been like, or they've done something else creatively with an agency and they've just been like, man, that was such a pain in the butt. It's not. If we understand what needs to be done, it actually goes very quickly and is very enjoyable. And we don't like to do anything either that's not enjoyable. So
it's more enjoyable too to see you put something out and you see success. There are metrics where we can point and say, look, yeah, that effort that you put in and the collaboration that we all had together, look at what it's doing, in the form of lead inquiries, appointments made, sitting in front of government groups and having them reward you with, with benefits from the state because your brand looks good, you're established, you've got your stuff together. There's obviously a lot of benefit to having that coherent or that cohesive brand. It's not just an exercise in futility. It's just like there's an outcome. If it's done well, there's a happy outcome. So that's to me, that's the best part of it is, for 3 months, it's kind of grueling or longer, but you're working toward a goal and you're going to be able to tell whether or not that worked.
Yeah. It's like losing
kind of scary.
It's like losing weight.
The most satisfying part of it. Right. The most satisfying part of this job is when you sit down, you craft a strategy, you create all the material and the assets to put that strategy in motion, and then watching it work and seeing people respond to it. Seeing people respond to a strong, coherent, positive brand message, to me, is the most satisfying part of this job. It's like and in your heart, as you enter into that endeavor, you know it's going to work because you've done the math, so to speak. It's like an equation. If you do ABC, you'll get DEF.
Yeah,
that's how it works with us.
We don't just look at analytic reports and go, whoa, look at that, make assumptions. We actually talk and ask and interview. And I think that's a part that maybe is what makes us a little bit weird, but I'm okay with that. Anyways, if you guys have any questions, go to nerdbrandagency.com/podcast. Listen to the show. We are on Spotify and iTunes as well. You'll find the links there to subscribe and listen. You'll also find a link to subscribe and listen and watch this show on YouTube. We appreciate all the likes and the folks out there that are helping us, work toward that goal of getting that vanity URL, because YouTube is a little bit more peculiar about having that NerdBrand Agency as our custom URL than Facebook and others, because they're just like, whatever, if that's what you want. YouTube's like, give a minute. You need some listens and you need some things, and that's what we're hoping that we can invite you to do so on that channel for us. But other than that, I think that's going to wrap up the show. Thanks for all the listens. Thanks for all the subscribes and likes again. Click the bell and icon notification. We'll probably be here or somewhere on the video. Our editor will put that in. And we will catch you next week. And remember, keep your nerd brand strong.